What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Today we're talking about big bass boats versus little bass boats. Stay tuned. Guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I post 2 videos a week to help you catch more fish. I also do live streams from time to time, probably once every 2 weeks. And I also do series as well, just like this one called the Fishing Fundamentals. If you click the little eye right up here at the end of this video, you can watch the rest of that playlist. So let's talk about big bass boats versus little bass boats. So if you're like me and you're actually looking to get a new bass boat at some point in the near future, or even just dreaming about one, at some point you've probably crossed your mind whether or not you want a big bass boat or a little bass boat. Now, both have their advantages and disadvantages, and we're going to talk about a few of those today, and hopefully this gives you an idea on some things you may not have considered. So the first thing that everyone really wants to think about is the deck space. Obviously, this gets the upper hand by the big bass boats. Bigger your boat, the larger your front deck and back deck are gonna be. Now that doesn't mean that little bass boats don't have large enough deck space to be fishing from. I love my bass tracker. It does me a good job. I do wish the deck was a little bigger though, but that's for the big bass boats to handle. Now, as far as speed, it depends on kind of what category you go with. If you get a longer, maybe aluminum bass boat with a 175 or a 200 on it, that speed's going to be quite comparable to what the pros use with the big bass boats, with the 200s, 250s, 300s on there. So speed between a big bass boat and a little bass boat can be kind of a wash. But if you're out there just trying to relax, does speed really even matter? Of course it does. Who are we kidding? All right, the next subject we're going to talk about is weight. Now, little bass boats always going to weigh less, but that gives advantages and disadvantages. So some advantages, it's not going to cost as much at the fuel pump for both your truck or your vehicle that you're pulling it with and for your boat. But on the other hand, if you have a bigger boat, the wind is less likely to move you on the lake. So that's a huge advantage in my mind, since I fish in the windy panhandle of Texas. If I don't have to fight the wind nearly as much, that's a plus in my book. The next thing is storage. Now, big bass boat is obviously going to have more storage than the little guy. But with some creative thinking, creative ideas, you can create more storage for your little bass boat and actually carry quite a bit of tackle. It's the other stuff that always gets me, like a little tool bag, the extra life jackets, the net, that little day box to put all my day things in, the cooler, all that kind of stuff. The extra stuff always takes much more space than I'd like it to. So that's why I like the big bass boat in the storage compartments. Haha, like the pun there? Now let's talk a bit about maintenance cost. A little bass boat, you're probably gonna have a single axle trailer, so you only have 2 tires to maintain. It's also gonna have less wear and tear on your hubs because it is smaller. Some may argue that since you have all your weight directed on just 2 hubs, that you may have a little less reliability. We'll call it a wash there. As far as cost of changing the oil filter, spark plugs and that kind of thing, the smaller boat's going to have less cost there than your big bass boat. On your big bass boat, you're going to have probably 4 tires. It's going to be a tandem axle. You're probably going to have brakes on it as well, so you're going to have to maintain the brake system. You're going to consume a lot more oil, not consume a lot more oil. Your boat needs more oil than the smaller bass boats. And overall, it's just going to cost more in the maintenance category. Next step is the ease of pulling. Now, both are going to have their advantages and disadvantages here. As far as maneuverability, being able to back into tight spaces, and having a trailer follow behind you pretty well, the little bass boat will be better at this. But as far as ease of pulling, your larger bass boats with a tandem axle trailer will have less bounce, and you will have brakes on them and all that. So like your overall travel, day-to-day travel may seem easier with a larger bass boat because it's going to have brakes and it has tandem axle trailer. Where your smaller one is going to be lighter, so you're going to consume less fuel to pull it, and you're going to notice a lot more bounces from your trailer because everything rides on that single axle. Now, which boat can go the furthest? Well, that's going to be kind of a wash because without specific engines and specific boats and their tank sizes and that kind of thing, it's going to be kind of hard to determine which one can go further than the other. Well, which one's going to handle the chop and the waves better? Well, obviously it is going to be your bigger bass boat. Bigger your boat, the more weight it has, the easier it's going to be able to handle the chop and the waves. Doesn't necessarily mean you're invincible, so keep that in mind. But it's definitely going to be able to take those waves a lot better. You're going to have a larger motor and going to be able to power through a lot of waves that the smaller bass boat's going to struggle with. And finally, we get to the big one. How much does it cost? Well, the larger your bass boat, the larger your wallet better be. Because that little bass boat don't cost very much when you start looking at bass boats that cost $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. So if you're really wanting a big bass boat, you better save your pennies and maybe get another job. Yeah, they're pretty expensive. Whether or not you're looking at a big bass boat or a little bass boat, hopefully I pointed out a few things that you should look at and consider before making that decision to buy either. But like always, until next time, get out there and go catch you some fish.